following episode was pre-recorded 3 weeks in advance.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Here we are again in unprecedented times. This afternoon we've got a very good guest on the show. It's Vladimir Zubkov, who's the Secretary General, and he represents TIACA, International Air Cargo Association. So, Vladimir, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Chris.
Good man. Now, firstly, Vladimir, where are we connected to you? Where are you at the moment?
Well, at the moment, I'm not far from Montreal, Canada, in a house without that many contacts with the people, but all well connected to the world through the media, internet, telephone.
Very good, very good. So, practicing the best practices, huh?
Yes.
Now, Vladimir, just so that our listeners, so that they know what what your involvement and your responsibility and your support responsibilities are, can you give us a little bit of background, please?
As you mentioned, I'm the Secretary General of the International Air Cargo Association. And for those who don't know the association, it's like a mix of the members from IATA, ACI, IATA. So we are representing the air cargo supply chain, which starts with the shippers, forwarders, ground handling companies, and then continues with the airports, with the airlines, many other associated services. Even the Boeing and Airbus, they are members of our association because they manufacture cargo planes.
Very good. So a really broad spectrum there, huh?
It's a broad spectrum, and the important part of our work is to bring this wide spectrum of interest and trades into one smooth, well-functioning air cargo supply chain, so that the procedures and interests are well aligned and the cargo is moving through the supply chain as efficiently as possible.
Very good, very good. Now, Vladimir, that was a tall task in our yesterdays, the way the world and the business was. Now, coming into this particular crisis that everybody in the whole world is experiencing, it's absolutely incredible. It's going to be even more challenging in our tomorrows and the new normal. How do you think that's going to change?
Well, first of all, let's talk about today, because the changes tomorrow, they depend on how we are handling the current tasks. And if we are doing well today, then it will be easier to roll back into the normal life tomorrow. So the important thing today is to handle all the new challenges which appear almost on a daily basis. And some of them are pretty common to many organizations. And we are trying to resolve them as a global community. Maybe later on you will want to hear about the special group which was created by ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, to coordinate the efforts of many international organizations.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And as part of your group, and it's important for people to listen because it's so topical at the moment, cargo is still ongoing.
Yes, cargo is still ongoing, and even more than before. And more and more actions by the states, by even individuals, depend on how well the cargo is moving. Let me give you an example with the masks, which some people believe are not useful, but still it's a way of protecting yourself. Initially, the cargo was moving from Europe to China. The masks were flowing this direction. And now, when China is pulling out and resumed manufacturing, these masks are flying back, not the same, of course, but those manufactured in China, they're flying back to Europe, to United States, to other places where they are needed. So the cargo is playing a vital role. And it's not only masks, of course, but the medical supply, the equipment which is required, the food stuff, all this is now flown by air.
Exactly, and it's going to need to keep rolling. Now, some of the stories I've heard, Vladimir, and you'll probably be able to endorse these or correct them, is that in some countries where there's urgent products necessary to be transported, some of the workers who should be able to get to the airports and work out of the warehouses, they're having restricted opportunity to get to work. Are you hearing the same?
Yes, but it's not only the workers, which is definitely a very important category. But let me start with the pilots. And the pilots are those who are crisscrossing the territories and continents. And as we know, in many countries, there is a restriction for movement, and there's a quarantine of 14 days for anybody who comes into the country.
Yep.
And imagine the pilot who just came back from China, and if he is treated the same way, then he is to be taken out of service for 2 weeks. So this is one of the issues which we managed to resolve, at least for some countries, with the help of this international group. And as an example, which I received yesterday of the positive efforts of all the aviation community,
yep.
the one of the biggest states in the world, Russia, announced yesterday that yes, they are clarifying the ban for all the entries, and the air crews, apart from a few other disciplines, are exempt from this 14-day quarantine. So this is the way how things are being resolved with the help of ICAO and the international group. And of course, like you started with the workers, yes, it's a very real issue. People work together. They have to follow the guidance for protection, wash hands, use cleaning material, keep distance. But inevitably, some reduction in the workforce is taking place.
Exactly. But like I say, it's one thing to get the pilots who either don't have to stay on the aircraft or don't have to take extra crews, and then not have to be isolated when they get home. But if people can't get to the airports and do the loading or do the acceptance from the trucks that are coming in, that's also slowing up the supply chain.
You are absolutely right. And I'm glad that you picked up this point, because remarkably, within the several meetings which we had under the umbrella of ICAO, the ground staff was not as prominent as it should be. Because everybody is concentrating on pilots and the crew, but those who are handling the stuff on the ground, I must admit it was taken almost for granted that they do work, and they, as you said, they experience difficulties. We have to address this.
Yeah. I've heard of some companies splitting the workforce so that they rotate every 3 weeks, so that if there was any contamination, they could do a deep clean of the premises and bring in new employees who would be able to carry on with the important supply chain work.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that even those who are not associated with aviation, they can hear or even witness that in the shops they do extra cleaning, not only of their hands, but also the belts on which products go, and all what only can be touched. Yes, the cleaning and other disinfection are very important procedures.
Exactly. Now, another key problem, and one that everybody is facing, is either being laid off, being asked to take unpaid leave, in some cases losing their jobs completely, in others reducing their remuneration packages. But that the whole effect of that is going to have a big impact on people when they come back. Now, when things do start to return to some sort of new normal, what sort of difficulty do you think the supply chain is going to have with ramping up and being prepared for when everybody wants to take the most advantage out of that open window of opportunity?
Well, first of all, I hope that we will retain as many people as possible, and all those who are supposed to come back, they will come back. But then inevitable that some people will need retraining. It's inevitable that some mechanisms will be rusty, sort of, and they will need to be tuned up again. And the procedures will have to take into account the new knowledge which we will have obtained by then in dealing with the virus. I do hope that it will be completely eliminated from our lives. But if there are some residues of this, then we need to be very, very careful. Then let me turn to the economic issues, because when people come back, they may not come back to the same companies, and some of them will not exist. Because of the economic situation, because they were not able to survive in the crisis. So then it's left to the entrepreneurial spirit of the people how to rebuild the parts of the industry which will not be able to survive. So that's, to me, perhaps is one of the key issues, along with the human issue, along with the issue of the personnel.
Yeah, and it's going to be a tough one. I also think, Vladimir, and I've been saying this to quite a few people, that once the first rebound or the first return happens, that there will be another problematic period. Whether it's seasonal or whether it's 6 months or 4 months later. So companies are going to have to be very agile in the way in which they ramp up and contract. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I fully agree with you, Chris. And it's remarkably today, for the first time at the meeting which I mentioned, the one under the ICAO umbrella, the issue of recovery in a coordinated fashion was brought up.
Very good.
And as I said, for the first time, we started talking not only about the protection measures and the problems with the crews and the others, but also started looking ahead and think what we need to do today in order that we will be able to roll back to the normal tomorrow. Exactly,
and prepare well. Another observation, yeah. And something that I think is definitely going to happen is we've seen a concentration of a few core areas in the world where so much business is relied upon. And as a result of this and the effect of then having those areas either withdrawn or reduced or the way things have gone now, that will change again in the future. And people will want to start being a little bit more self-sufficient and self-reliant in their own home markets and spread the risk of supply more globally rather than in a few concentrated areas.
Well, it's a very interesting question, Chris, and it brings back some memories about whole countries which were isolated due to political reasons
Yeah.
And then they had to build up their own industries and infrastructure, which would allow them to sustain the life of their countries. Of course, it's never 100% isolation, but at least people start looking for replacement internally, what they can do within themselves.
Yeah.
No doubt, especially in say, the framework of the European Union, countries have what they call it a sort of specialization. Some are specialized on tourism industry, some are specialized on growing olives, some on manufacturing Porsche cars. And this kind of specialization is good, but like you suggested, we need to make sure that within our own community or country or the group of countries, we have everything which would allow us to sustain our lives even at the situation of crisis. Hopefully will never repeat itself, but still we need to be self-sufficient more and more. Even within the families,
Yes.
like we are living together with my wife now in an isolated house, but we are prepared for anything which may happen with the generator on the side, with extra supply of water, this and that. So we have to start thinking in terms of in what way we want to depend on the outside world, and in what way we need to become prepared to support ourselves. It will never be 100%, but the more we can do ourselves in the critical situation, the better.
Yeah, it's certainly a different way of thinking, huh? And with that different way of thinking in mind, when the new normal comes, do you genuinely think, and representing such a cross-section of the supply chain, do you think there's going to be greater collaboration now between parties where otherwise they were very, self-protecting and not wanting to be open to everybody else?
Well, I wouldn't say that they were self-protecting and not open. There was always collaboration between the parties. And that's the very purpose of the existence of TIACA, to provide the platform for this collaboration, to stimulate this collaboration. But obviously, with the lessons learned and with the new spirit which people are picking up, I trust that there will be more desire for collaboration and desire for greater efficiency in our work.
Okay, so the fear of antitrust and people getting together too closely, you think that'll go back to some sort of normality and sense rather than the paranoia that was there?
Well, you mentioned antitrust. This is something which I cannot comment on because this was the necessity. It was introduced, we follow, and every meeting which we have starts with the statements of antitrust. And I am not prepared to declare that this is unnecessary. Maybe there will be some adjustments allowing for more liberal work on the markets, but it's for the superior officials to decide. At this moment, I can only say that so far, at least in our work, the antitrust measures, the antitrust regulations, they didn't stop us from doing the work. But I'm open to any changes, and I have seen many of them in the course of my aviation life, and I'm sure that there will be some in the future.
I'm sure, Vladimir. Now, also, now that things have been experienced now globally, a lot of your members now, I'm sure, will be looking, or they should be looking, and thinking to themselves, we had an awful lot of legacy waste, legacy extra weight that we could now shed and start to streamline all of the business. Are you seeing that people are actually starting to look now at how they can come back simpler, leaner, more fitter as far as an organization?
Chris, I would say that perhaps it's a bit too early because at the moment everybody is concerned with what to do now, how to do the business, some of them how to survive.
Yeah.
For some, of course, it's the opposite: how to obtain enough capacity in order to meet the requirements of the market. So the objectives today perhaps are slightly different from what you suggested in your question, Chris. But I'm sure that you are one step ahead of many of us, and you are thinking of what is to happen in a few days and a few weeks from now.
Well, thanks for that. I mean, I wish I could see exactly what is going to happen, and that's one of the crazy things about the way things are going now is things change every couple of days, and I think everybody must be looking towards some green shoots of control and stability, and the way things are turning around in China now. Are you seeing an uptake in production in China? And I know the domestic travel has started back again.
The domestic, I wouldn't comment on this, but when it comes to the production, yes, and as I mentioned, it reflects on the cargo flights. Even some passenger aircraft are participating in the cargo movement these days. Yeah. And this is good because the demand for cargo transportation is growing very fast. It's almost 1 week since we noticed this, and me staying in touch with some of the members who are involved in this particular side of the business, I can see that they are becoming more and more active. What will be happening next, of course, remains to be seen, but at least this, to me, is the sign of recovery of some parts of our business.
Exactly, and it gives a sort of an indication as to the pain that everybody has to go through, and then the sort of time period. So it hopefully it allows people to see, what's going to happen. So please God, everybody else will start to show signs of stability, and especially with the casualties and the numbers that keep going up every day, and even more so in Europe, which is a terrible thing. Now, e-commerce, during all of these issues, people still need certain supplies, certain commodities, and the e-commerce business is going crazy, huh?
Yeah. This is the way people get their supplies these days. Yes, and I'm one of them.
And I would say, when you said about the generator, you're quite out in the wilds there in Canada, or is that just in case of just the worst case scenario with the power going?
Well, I'm not in the wilds. I'm just in a small city north of Montreal. I have the power supply, but God forbid, strong wind breaks the power line. Then I need to be prepared.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to know that you've got everything covered, Vladimir. Huh?
Yes, Chris. At least this side of my life is covered.
Good man. Yeah. Now, getting back to your responsibilities. How often are the members meeting, and what sort of topics are being discussed?
Well, this time the directions of my work is mainly in two ways. First of all, it's the virtual meetings with the international organizations which are like-minded, which are in the same business. And this is well structured within the umbrella, within the environment of ICAO. We have IATA participating there. We have ACI, Airports Council International. We have IATA. We have even Council joined today. Of course, TIACA is very active there with air cargo issues, but also the association which is representing FedEx, DHL, World Health Organization is there. So this is the group of international organizations which is sifting through the problems which everybody brings to the table. And then, as the result, the coordinated actions are being taken. And the most powerful actions are being taken by ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, which contacts the states, contracting states, with their main mechanism, the state letters. And what goes into state letters is suggested by the participants of the meetings. Then the ICAO team refines these messages and the states receive. Why it's important? Just last week, the state letter appeared which said that please protect the aviation, please allow the crews not to go to the quarantine, and several other appeals which we were able to use. For instance, one of my members signaled from Africa that two states in Africa, they completely banned the cargo flights. And he requested action. So I wrote to the ministries of these two states with reference to the ICAO state letter, which was also was coming to them, and explain that the air cargo is the vital supply for their own nation.
Exactly.
That we are bringing medicine, we are bringing food. And the very fact that I was supported by ICAO state letter helps to resolve this. The same with Russia. And this is one direction of working with the international organizations. And the other one is to keep the members of TIACA informed and united. And this is what I'm doing with the help of our weekly publication, which is called Friday Flyer. This is what we do with the help of our company responsible for communication, LQ, and they are informing our membership with the help through the press releases, through the social media. So we are using all the package of information means in order to tell our members, this is what we are doing, this is what is useful, this is what the authorities are doing. So keep working and being united and look into the brighter future. But also what is very important, give me feedback. What do you need? And this is what I will feed into the machinery of ICAO. And just yesterday, the Inditex, maybe the name is not known, but if I say Zara, if I say other fashion brands, this is Inditex. It's 170 states where they have more than this, where they have their shops. Yep. So they brought to my attention their real issues. And I put this into the agenda of the meeting in ICAO. And this is how we benefit from the knowledge of people on the ground. This is what their problems are. And this is what we, being connected to the authorities, to talk about. And this is what we need to resolve. So these two directions are important to me. One towards the authorities and the other one towards my members. And this is how I interconnect both of them.
Yeah, and it's a very valuable line of communication. And
I
very
lost you, Chris.
yeah, no, sorry, I said it's a very, very important line of communication and very effective.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
No, very well. Well done. Well done. Now, you mentioned at the beginning of that, Vladimir, about technology. And obviously people are now learning to communicate in different ways, and especially with people working from home in remote locations and all over. I think that's going to be something that people are going to embrace a lot more when the new normal comes in after this crisis.
I'm sure that it's going to be used wider. Like the meeting today, on my screen, I had more than 25 images of those who were participating. And it was very convenient, you can see who is talking, you can see the names. If people choose, you can see the faces, and it's all well organized. I am not saying that this is something completely new, but this is something which is in existence for greater use.
Yes.
And I think that this is what we need to use more and more. The communication can become more efficient and less costly.
Yeah.
Maybe we can replace some of the face-to-face meetings with this kind of meetings. And it's not the only communication facility which is in existence, but I'm talking about this one because I have to admit I discovered it for myself only through the participation in the ICAO chaired meetings.
Yeah, and it can be, like you said, you can see the people there. It also, some of them you can see what the share of the participation is by the people who attend the meeting. So it makes people who don't actually commit to anything or say anything look at themselves a little bit. So I think it's a very, very useful tool, and one that will be used a lot in the future. And like you said, Vladimir, it'll keep the cost down and it'll reduce travel to a degree, which has a positive with the cost and also on climate change, but it will impact on the recovery, especially on the passenger side.
Chris, you're absolutely right. But also maybe it's in a bit light-hearted way, I would say that those who participate, they will be more attentive to the participation. Because I know from many virtual meetings that people can do other things while as if participating in the meetings. I even remember there was a very curious video clip, which was showing what people do when the conference calls are going on. But with this kind of technology, especially if you use the video camera, yep, you can see people, either they are looking at the screen, at the camera and participating, or they're making coffee or playing with the dog or doing something else.
Exactly.
So it's a stimulation for more active participation, and then the efficiency will gain.
Yeah, I think I've seen some of those videos, Vladimir, and they're very entertaining.
Yes.
Yeah, it makes people think. Okay, now that's we've covered a lot of things, and hopefully people will realise, I think, the benefit of having organisations who represent key parts of the supply chain and the importance of bringing people together, collaborating, working towards one goal and being a lot more efficient. And it's like anything, if you're part of a team, you're normally more effective. And if the team wins, there's more people involved in that particular win and success. So I think what you're doing, Vladimir, is great. I've known you for a while now, and I know how hard you work at it and how committed you are. So fair play to you, well done. And I think we should also recognise and give thanks to all of the people who are helping the supply chain move, and especially those on the front lines who are helping with all the medical support, from nurses, doctors, cleaners, porters, people who work in the restaurants of hospitals, etc. Everybody who has anything to do with looking after our communities, our families, our friends, we give a huge big thank you, and please keep going and keep your strength and your spirits up with the knowledge that your actions are being respected and recognised.
Well, Chris, thank you very much. And I would like to state a very important thing that though I was talking to you alone, it doesn't mean that I'm working alone. I am working together with the board of directors, with the chairman, vice chairman, and I receive guidance and help from them on a regular basis. And also, I'm supported in this by my staff, not very big staff, but still the secretariat. So it's a team effort. And when I'm saying that it's on behalf of all the TIACA team, which I have mentioned, the board and the secretariat. I thank you, all of them, and I thank you.
No, it's a pleasure, Vladimir, and thank you so much for coming on. Stay safe, my friend, and hope the generator doesn't have to be used. And keep doing what you're doing, and you're doing a good job. Really, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chris, and you too. Keep well.
Thank you.